As usual, after every lecture, I'm going to send you the video, but I'm not going to send you this book because I had to pay for it. But when I send you the video, you should use that video to write down the notes in your civic education tuition book. Are we together?
Yes.
All right. So you can see that we do have a lot of topics to cover in civic education. Grade 10 work, grade 11 work, civil society, media governance, Zambia Bill of Rights, family law. We do have a lot of things to cover. I'm hoping by July, we should at least finish 90% of all the topics so that the remaining amount of time, we can just focus on past paper revision. All right, so can you see my screen?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, okay, thank you. So our first topic today in civic education is, by the way, you can buy this book. You can go in Bookworld and just ask for the book, High Marks in Civic Education from grade 10 to 12. You're going to find it. It's a very good book and it has got 148 pages, which we have to know. We have to really study all these topics. But the good part is that you have videos and you're going to be able to write the notes in your book as a form of revision. And before your civic education exam, please just keep on watching these videos. So we have to start this lecture by defining what a constitution is. Because you know, every single country has some form of rules and regulation that govern the way people live. You know, without rules and regulations, there will be chaos. So to avoid the chaos of people, uh, people come up with something known as a government or some form of government structure or system, and they come up with the laws and regulations that are going to govern those people, which is a constitution. So by definition, these will come in multiple choice or an essay, because in an exam, they take into account your grade 10 work all the way to grade 12 work. They won't leave something behind because they know that in order for people to pass, they should bring a combination of simple things and difficult things. So these are among the simple things that the examiners usually like to bring in either the MCQ or the exams. So a constitution means rules made by a particular society and agree to be governed by them. So they agree, they are made, and they agree to be governed by them. So it also means a set of rules or of a particular society has agreed to be governed by. And it is the highest law of the land. No wonder they say no one is above the constitution, because this is the highest law of the land. You can commit some form of corruption, you can commit minor crimes, but once you commit a crime against the constitution, there is no escaping that. It is the highest law of the land. So an exam question can come: write an essay on the types of constitution that we have. In that essay, give the merits of that constitution, give the demerits of that constitution. So regardless of whatever country that you come from, a constitution can either be written, a constitution can either be written or unwritten, flexible, or rigid. So these are the four types of constitutions, and we have to look at each and we have to look at all of these types of constitutions in details. But the first thing that I want us to talk about is what does it mean for something to have merit? So what does it, the definition of merit? Can you see my this box that has appeared here?
Yes.
Because every type of constitution is going to have a merit and it also have demerits. So the definition of a merit is what I've written on the board or on the display screen there. A merit, for a constitution to have a merit, it's the quality of being particularly good or worthy, especially so as to deserve praise or reward. So something that's very good and worthy de- um, demands merit. You've seen that. Okay, give always give credit where credit is due. That's called giving merit because of something that's particularly good or worthy. So when someone says, all right, what are the merits of these constitutions? They are saying, what are the good qualities, the desirable qualities that deserve praise and reward for this type of constitution? I hope you're following.
Yes.
All right, so these are a few examples of the merits, the rewards, the desirable qualities of a good constitution. It is clear and definite. Here, the word definite here, it shouldn't be subject to, it shouldn't be vague, it should be clearly defined. So here's the definition of definite: clearly stated or decided, not vague or doubtful. It shouldn't be doubtful. A good constitution, which is subject to merit, so merits of a written constitution. Oh, by the way, we are now talking about a written constitution. Huh? So by definition, so we're talking about these one by one: written, unwritten, flexible, or rigid. So a written constitution is a type of constitution in which all the rules or provisions are written in one single document. So you can even have access to a digital copy of the constitution, and you can read and understand what that constitution is talking about. So it's written in one document. That's the definition of a written constitution. And it has a number of merits and demerits that we're going to talk about. So right now we're focusing on the merits of a written constitution. So because it's written, it's clear and definite, meaning it's not vague, it's just right there, straight to the point. And like I said, people can access a digital copy, so people can easily read and understand the structure and functions of each organ of the government. What the organs of the government, we're going to look at them shortly, like the judiciary, the legislature, the finance organ. So because it's a written document, you can easily read and understand your government of that particular country. So it cannot be easily amended. So amended means it cannot be manipulated in any way to suit someone's particular needs and emotions. For example, the way people amend holy scriptures like the Bible, you find that, all right, one particular verse has a lot of interpretations. That's sort of not good. But the good part about a written constitution, it cannot easily be changed or amended or manipulated without passing through some form of system to change that law in the constitution. Another good quality, another merit, it is clear and very democratic, since the citizens are highly involved in the decision-making process. So it's clear and democratic since the citizens are able to prove by reading, what is this bulletin about? Let me read about it. Can I give it a merit? Can I demerit it? So you see that a written constitution is very, very democratic. So these are the points that you have to choose when you define a written constitution and the merits of a written constitution. So with every advantage, there is some form of disadvantages. So what are some of the demerits of a written constitution? So when we say demerits, this was me explaining what amend is. I've already explained it. To amend is to make minor changes or to manipulate some form of document. So let's look at some of the demerits of a written constitution. So we have to first understand, what does this term mean here, a demerit? A demerit means a fault or a disadvantage. So every time you see the word demerit, remember civic education is about, you have to know a lot of terminologies or else it will seem boring and uninteresting. So make sure as you are studying, you know particular definitions. So a demerit is a fault or a disadvantage. So what are some of the disadvantages of a written constitution? So the first thing is that the powers of interpretation are always with the judiciary on the rules. You know, some of these constitutions, they are very, very difficult to understand. So you might need someone who's maybe has a detailed understanding of law. Maybe they went to Ziale for further training. So interpreting these, it might not be so easy to a Zambian citizen who hasn't done some form of law studies. So mostly the powers of interpretation are always with the judiciary, which is an organ of our government, on the rules. And the judges may interpret the rules wrongly to meet certain, so that they can try to amend or manipulate or change it in a certain way, because these are very highly, judges are very highly educated people, so they may interpret the rules very wrongly. It compresses all the rules and details in one single document. So sometimes you need like a volume one, volume two, maybe another different type of a document that can explain certain sub-segments of a constitution even more clearly. But this one, it's just one single document. Everything has to be compressed in that document, meaning it has to be straight to the point. You can even miss out certain things that you thought are not important but are important. So that's one of the disadvantages. It compresses all the rules and ideas in a single document, which is not so good. So that's it about a written constitution. Have you gotten something from that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So let's go into the second type of a constitution, which is an unwritten constitution. So just by the way, by its definition, you know, it's unwritten. It means it's practically not in a document. So this is a type of constitution where its provisions or rules are not written in a single document. So it has multiple forms of documents, and this constitution mainly depends on the customs. So what exactly here are we talking about in terms of customs? What does the word custom mean? Remember terminology. So a custom is a traditional or widely accepted way of behaving or doing something that is specific to a particular society, place, or time. If they say no, uh, Zambia is a Christian nation. That's one of the customs that we practice in Zambia, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's culturally accepted that we are widely a Christian nation. But in some other Islamic states, women are not allowed to drive. Women are not allowed to sort of wear trousers. They are sort of in veils covering their faces because it's their customs, meaning they are going to base their constitutional laws based on their beliefs, based on their cultural systems. So that's what a custom means. It's a traditional and widely accepted way of behaving or doing something that is specific to a particular society, place, and time. So that's one of the characteristics of an unwritten constitution. It mainly depends on the customs. A good example, by the way, this can be an MCQ. Britain is an example of such a constitution. So Britain is an example of an unwritten constitution. However, even if Britain has an unwritten constitution where you have the whole cultural Queen of England, etc., it does have some form of written constitution. For example, its Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement. So what are the merits of an unwritten constitution? What are some of the advantages of an unwritten constitution? The first thing is that it's actually very flexible. So it's easily changed or amended to suit new circumstances or occurrences. Let's say a president dies, or maybe a high commissioner dies, and you, the vice president takes over. That's an example of being able to sort of easily change. You don't have to pass another rule or a referendum to sort of have new elections. It's just direct. It's easy to change. That's the good part of an unwritten constitution. It is best for unexpected emergencies without breaking its framework, like I'm from explaining. So it's very easy, flexible, easily amended. It it's proactive in that, it's best for these unexpected emergencies, like a president dying, or maybe someone on a high office dies. And also it prevents resolutions by satisfying popular demands. So what does this word here, resolutions, mean? So resolutions, it's a firm decision to do something or to not do something. So it prevents these unnecessary resolutions because it meets popular demands. When we say popular demand, remember we said it's culturally based, traditional based. So if there are a lot of Christians in the country, there won't be a lot of arguments. There won't, hence preventing resolutions. If there are a lot of Muslims in that country, it will prevent arguments, preventing these whole resolutions. So it's flexible. It can accommodate unexpected emergencies without breaking its framework, and it prevents unnecessary arguments. So you can say it prevents resolutions. Remember, you have to use specific terminology to get marks. So it prevents resolutions by satisfying popular demands because it's very cultural driven. So what are some of the demerits? We said demerits are like faults or disadvantages. One thing, there is no digital copy. It's unwritten, so you cannot read and understand it. Therefore, it is very difficult to be mastered. You cannot defend yourself. Like, for example, I said in certain countries, women are not allowed to drive. So because it's culturally based, there's nothing that you can read and understand and say why. So it's you can't understand it, and it's therefore very difficult to master. It's very unstable since it can change at any time. Sometimes because of Western influences, cultures tend to change. And when cultures tend to change, a constitution can be subject to change. So it's very unstable because if it's driven by culture, culture is a changing thing. Sometimes you like this, sometimes you like that. So it's very unstable in that regard. It depends on customs, not on written document for verification and confirmation. So like I said here, you cannot tell whether your rights are being abused or not because it's highly dependent on customs. If you're a woman, you're not allowed to drive, that's the custom, end of the story. So you cannot sort of pass it through verifications and confirmations. So we are done with a written constitution and unwritten constitution. The other two are flexible constitution and rigid constitution. So what is an example of a flexible constitution? Flexible meaning it's subject to change easily. So a flexible constitution, this is a type of constitution which can easily be changed or amended. So here they are saying that it's the same word, or changed or manipulated in a specific way to meet the needs of the people or the current state. Is there war in the country? Is there like some form of Boko Haram kidnapping women? Should we issue a state of emergency? So it's flexible enough to be amended that way. So this is the type of constitution that is sort of flexible, easily changed to suit them, uh, to to suit where am I? Oh, okay, here we are. This is the type of constitution which can be easily changed or amended. It does not need many requirements for it to change. Maybe just a simple parliament meeting and they pass certain votes, and like that it's easily changed. Like here at this point, just a simple majority in the parliament can change it.
Okay.
So what are the merits of a flexible constitution? Remember, merits, desirable qualities or advantages. One, it is easily changed to suit them, to suit and meet emergencies. There is famine in a country. You know, let's have a state of emergency so that we can have some sort of foreign aid. It can easily be changed to suit the needs and emergencies. Also, it allows new convenient ideas to be included in the rules. For example, maybe now why are women not allowed to drive in Islamic countries? If Islamic countries had a flexible constitution, such bad rules affecting human rights could be easily changed. So it's one of the good advantages of a flexible constitution. It is more democratic by consistent changing to suit people's demands. So, you know, democracy is about the people. So if you have a flexible constitution, the people can say, we do not like this, let's change this. So because of a flexible constitution, it is very, very highly democratic. So what are some of the demerits of a flexible constitution? So again, remember the word demerit is synonymous with fault or disadvantage. So, you know, frequent changing makes people lose confidence and trust. You know, uh, at times people are afraid of change. So if you keep changing your constitution, you'll be like, is there something wrong with our country? Is there something wrong with our cultures? Is the Western world trying to change our tradition? Why are we now uh, doing certain things that are similar to the Americans? So because it's very subject to change, people can lose confidence and trust in their government. It does not fully follow the principle of democracy because even a simple majority changes it in the parliament. So sometimes to change a rule, you need to consult the entire state. Everyone has to take part, everyone has to read that document, and everyone has to have a vote, but it's somehow not democratic because parliament can just decide, oh, let's have an assembly meeting and let's change a subsection of this type of law. So it's not fully democratic and it's highly unstable. It's very unstable because it's subject to change over time. So that ends our discussion of a flexible constitution. So let's now look at what a rigid constitution means. You know, rigid means not easily changed or amended. It's very strict. So that's what a rigid constitution means. It can only be amended or changed a little bit by a constitutional assembly, a national constitutional conference, and a referendum. So you can see how strict it is. And we've defined certain terms here: constitutional assembly, a national constitutional conference, and a referendum. So what are some of these things? So let's define these things. So a constitutional assembly is a body or assembly by popularly elected representatives which is assembled for the purpose of drafting or adopting a constitution or a similar document. So we appoint our ministers, we appoint our council heads, district chairmans, etc. So those people can represent the entire population and meet to decide to change one or two things in the constitution. So that's what a constitutional assembly is. What about a national? What about a national constitutional conference? National constitutional conference. So this is way bigger, right? This is something that's way bigger. So we're saying a conference, a national constitutional conference is a forum. It's a very, very huge forum for the examination. So this one is very, very strict because there is one examination, there is debate. After debate, there is adoption of proposals to alter the constitution as contained in a draft or submitted by that constitution. So these can even go up to weeks or months where these elected officials are just examining, debating, and trying to vote and adopt. So that's what a national constitutional assembly means. And then a referendum is just a vote. So after the entire debate, etc., they now have to vote. So it's a direct and universal vote in which an entire electorate is invited to vote on a particular proposal and can have national-wide or local forms, and it can result in the adoption of a new policy or specific law. So a referendum is just a vote that can change or not change a given rule in a constitution. So you've seen how rigid this type of constitution is, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you. So because it's very rigid, it does have one merit. It can only change by special procedures. Hence, no one can change it to suit an individual. It protects everyone's rights because if you just it can either protect or not protect people's rights because it's very bureaucratic. It requires a lot of meetings to even change one tiny thing. So its huge advantage is that it cannot easily be changed. But you have to know this full sentence. So what are some of the demerits? Remember the faults or the disadvantages of this rigid constitution. So one, it is not representative enough in in a democracy. So because of these national assemblies, uh, these constitutional assemblies, and sometimes referendums, it it sounds very dictatorship in a way because they are forcing you, whether you like this rule or not, to change it. It might even take 5 years to just change this. So me fighting 5 years just to change something, uh, you can easily give up as a person who wants specific types of change in your country. So it's not so representative of a democracy. It is very rigid. A good example, you've seen the United States and their huge parliament systems. I don't know if you managed to see the impeachment of Donald Trump. There were lawyers, there were other representatives, there were people from the government. It took such a long, long time. So this again is a multiple choice question. Which of the following has a rigid constitution? A, USA, B, Britain, C, China, D, Zambia. Your answer has to be the United States of America has an example of a rigid constitution. So, what is the structure and content of the Zambian constitution? So, we have to talk about structure and what it contains and give a brief history of how we got here at the end of the lecture. So, it all started in 1996 when we said each and every time you start a constitution, you have to begin with a preamble. A preamble is simply an introduction. So, an introduction to the actual document of the constitution. So, you give a brief summary of what the constitution contains. So, it explains, since it's an introduction, it has to talk about the aims and purposes of the constitution and the government. It also states that we, the people of Zambia, must maintain Zambia as a sovereign state. Sovereign means we are not subject to international rule. We make our own decisions. And that Zambia shall remain forever unitary, multi-party, and democratic. A sovereign state, like I said, is one which rules itself and not by foreigners. So this is what a preamble has to contain. It has to have an introduction about what the document is talking about, the aims and purposes of our constitution, and it has to talk about maintaining Zambia as a sovereign state, a unitary state, multi-party and democratic state in the preamble. And remember, the 1996 constitution up to date, it has to begin with a preamble. So this is the structure of our constitution. Remember, you have to write down everything. So you have to even draw this diagram when I send you the video immediately after this lecture. So the structure of the Zambian constitution, or the organs, it referred to as organs. Sometimes we say wings of the Zambian constitution. So structure of the Zambian constitution, and this side of the table, it gives just a brief thing of what each organ is talking about. So here we have got national sovereignty and the state. So here it deals with the declaration of Zambia as a sovereign state. No one rules us, no foreigners rule us, we rule ourselves. Citizenship is another form of structure. So number one, Zambia is a foreign state. Part two of the structure of our constitution, citizenship, deals with the qualification for Zambian citizenship and withdrawal of citizenship. Do you have to be born in Zambia to be a citizen? Do you have to live in Zambia for approximately 10 years for you to be a citizen? If you commit a crime against the state, are you subject to withdrawal of citizenship? So this is the second wing of the Zambian constitution. The third one is protection of the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual. So this one deals with human rights, deals with the rights and freedoms of individuals which should be protected. The executive, here we're talking about election, tenure of office, how long should someone be in office, and removal of the president from office, functions of the president and ministers. So here, that's what the executive talks about. The legislature, I think I mentioned this is the fifth wing. The legislature talks about qualifications for elections to National Assembly, legislative powers, and members of the parliament. The judiciary, these are the lawyers, so deals with the courts and appointments of judges. Defense and national security, so function of Zambia Defense Force, and this is the police where you want to be here. So the part of the government that you're going to be will be the defense and national security, which function of the Zambia Defense Force and the police. Local government systems, the local government, these are the structures and function of, the local council and sub-districts. Direct principles of state policy and duties of a citizen. These deal with development of national policies, application of the constitution, and making sort of enactments of the law. We all need the national budget. So here we have the finance sector where we do taxations and withdrawal of monies, service commissions, commissions, pension laws and protection, NAPSA people, Human Rights Commission. So its establishment, independence, functions, powers, composition, and procedures, Chief and House of Chiefs, Institution of Chiefs, House of Chiefs, functions and composition, and miscellaneous means just other things that are clearly not specified under each wing or each organ of the government, like legislatures, reappointments, concurrent appointments, etc. So you have to draw this table. You have to know this table in your book, clearly defined. So how did we get here as a democratic country is what we're going to now talk about. So like a brief history of our constitution. So as Zambia, we are known of where sometimes our constitution is sort of not unique because Africa has somehow a shared constitution where we collect our ideas together and sort of try to make sense, because for a very long time as an African state we were very oppressed by foreign invaders like the British and the French. So our history of our constitution. So the constitution of Zambia is actually modeled along the Nigerian constitution of 1963. So we needed a template document that we can sort of try and manipulate to suit our own constitution. So we modeled our constitution against the Nigerian constitution of 1963. This was actually based on the 1950 European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Freedom. So this, when we talk about the convention, it means people met to make huge decisions that will impact the entire nation. So these Nigerians, they met somewhere. They are European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights, and these were called the Neo-Nigerian rights. And also they were incorporated in most Commonwealth countries. You know, these most Commonwealth countries. So in 1964, Zambia inherited the Northern Rhodesia Self-Government Constitution of 1963. But you know, our independence was in 1964, so this was somehow suspicious, because why did Zambia inherit Northern Rhodesia self-government constitution? They were white people in charge. So this was just to safeguard the interests of of the white people who were oppressing us here along 1963, because they had to somehow make their own policies to secure their wealth within our country. However, we did fight. And since 1964, Zambia has had many constitutional review commissions, so CRCs, constitutional review commissions, to improve the constitution from the 1963 Neo-Nigerian constitution. So for example, around 1972, we had so these are some of the reviews that are important for us to know. So the first one is the Chona Review Commission. So this was in the Second Republic, and its purpose was to recommend a one-party state establishment. So this was somehow not good, because it was subject to something that was not democratic. So it was actually unusual, where you've gotten your freedom, but you still want power to be in only one possession. So here, I think this is Kaunda, if I'm not mistaken. It banned all other political parties except UNIP. Yeah, this UNIP was sort of evil. So they just wanted one person to rule. At this time, electoral activities were not very free. So it was like you've gained independence, but you're still not democratic. Elections were more of a dictator, sort of fake-ish, sort of fake in nature, which is a plebiscite. Plebiscite. So means the type of voting to say yes or no. So plebiscite, maybe we should highlight this plebiscite. So a yes or no vote. This could be a multiple choice. So these counter errors where you nip, it was more of a yes or no vote. Oh, and the other name for publicity is actually a referendum. So a vote. Are you for or against something to change that rule? So this wasn't sort of good. It was evil. And look at the number of years that passed so fast, and so many years passed from 1972 to 1991 to have another constitutional review. So this is the Mvunga Constitutional Review Commission, and This was the Third Republic. Here, at least finally, in the Vunga Constitutional Review 1991, we actually recommended a multi-party democracy. Finally, here UNIP was kicked out, and we finally had some form of multi-party democracy. We highlight this multi-party democracy. All right. All right, so in the Mwanakatwe Review Commission, so this is the third review of our Zambian constitution, it recommended the qualification for standing in president's elections to only those who are both parents Zambian. So if both your parents are not Zambian, you cannot stand as a president. So here, this was sort of smart because other foreign, this is sort of also racist somehow, and I don't think this has changed, because imagine someone has a black mother and a white father and they have presidential ambitions. Because of this constitutional review, they cannot stand as president. So you need both parents to be actually born in Zambia. If they are not born in Zambia, you cannot run as a president. um, the fourth one was the Mungoba Review Commission in 2005, recommended the use of a single member majoritarian system, like 50 plus one. So you need to have at least 50 votes to sort of stand as a president, as a presidential candidate. If you don't have this number of majoritarian votes, you cannot stand. Then at least the draft constitution has not yet been adopted, January 2013. So because Zambia sort of has a, a written constitutional system, it's not easily amended. So here we are still, there's still subjects to change. So how do we, what, what is the process? What processes do we use to sort of adopt a constitution? Yes? Hello, Fabi.
Hello.
You are still with me?
Yes.
All right, okay, let's move on. So the constitution adoption process, so definition, what does it mean to adopt a new constitution? So this means the process of approving the copy of a draft constitution. So before a final document, there's a draft constitution. So the process of approving this draft constitution is the constitutional adoption process. And there are two methods of adopting the constitution. One, through the parliament. The draft constitution is taken to parliament, where the members of the parliament debate on the draft constitution before adopting it. So like a national assembly, like constitutional national assembly. And Zambia has used this about 3 times in all 3 constitutional review commissions. So I did give an example of how a rigid constitution is subject to change. So through the parliament, they have to sit down, they have to draft, they have to debate. And this big one, this constitutional assembly, which can even take up to months, this is a body of representatives elected by their respective interest groups to formulate, amend, or adopt a constitution of a country. Representatives are drawn from a lot of different sections of our culture, the churches, the learning institutions, the trade unions, and student bodies. Why is this more democratic? So this method is more democratic and more favorable to Zambian citizens because it actually allows citizens from various groups to be represented. As such, it is free from government interference or control. So a constitutional assembly is different from a small parliament assembly because this constitutional assembly has a bigger population representative form. We have got churches, learning institutions. We've got churches, learning institutions, trade unions, as well as student bodies. Because of all these subsections, we can have an ideal representation of the entire country before a law is passed or amended. Therefore, a constitutional assembly is a more democratic way of adopting a new constitution. So now that we've talked about what a constitution is, we have to look at the characteristics of a good constitution. So what are some of the characteristics of a good constitution? One, you have to be fair. It has to be very clear, I mean. So a constitution has to be clear. It shouldn't be vague. This means the language used must be very simple and not too technical to be understood by citizens. Remember, lawyers are very smart people. So when you're making a constitution, it has to be easily read by even someone selling tomatoes or a bus conductor in the streets there. So it has to be very clear because everyone is a Zambian citizen regardless of your occupation, whether you have a very high paying job or a low paying job, you're a Zambian citizen and you need to understand your constitution. So to be fair on everyone's level of education, a constitution has to be very clear. So these are the characteristics of a good constitution. Must not be rigid, it shouldn't be rigid. Like it should actually be very easy to change somehow. So must not be rigid to prevent change or too flexible to allow unnecessary change. So it should be in between. It should be in between, not so easy to amend or change, but too flexible to sort of adopt certain new changes and leave room for national emergencies like civil wars or famine to launch a state of emergency. So it shouldn't be too rigid, and yet it also shouldn't be too flexible. And it has to be stable and stand the test of time. You don't want to be, remember when we talked about the unwritten constitution that is subject to change because it's highly culture driven, it's very unstable. So a characteristic of a good constitution is that it shouldn't always be subject to change. Maybe have a review of the constitution, maybe after each decade, after 10 years, 15 years or so. So it has to be stable and stand the test of time. So let's continue with characteristics of a good constitution. It must protect and respond to social, economic, and political needs of the citizens. If the constitution isn't meeting the needs of the citizens, then it's not a good constitution. A good constitution has to protect and respond to the social, economic, and political needs of each citizen. And it has to be able to cater for the interests of various groups in a society: males, females, the church, the health sector, various religious sectors all have to be catered by this type of constitution. And most of all, a good constitution has to be able to protect the rights of its citizens. So why are we learning this? What's the importance of the Constitution? So one, it promotes and protects the rule of law. Remember, government rule, the constitutional rule, is the highest law in that country. So a good constitution, the importance of the constitution is that it promotes and protects the rule of law. Also, it safeguards the fundamental rights and freedoms of citizens. Our rights and freedoms have to be guarded by the Constitution, and it ensures a democratic governance. Also, it gives equal opportunities for individual development. So this marks the end of our topic one on the Constitution. Remember, each and every topic is very important. So right now, immediately, I'm going to send you this video. download it, get your civic education tuition book, copy down all these notes while listening to the video. So you listen to the video, you pause, you write down what you can see. Again, you listen to the video, you pause, you write down what you can see. I recommend that you get a highlighter so that you can highlight certain important points that I was saying. Our next topic will be governance systems in Zambia. Have you understood something?
Yes.
Nikubelenga, you have to study, you have to have interest. Civic education is a very, very important subject to know as a Zambian citizen. You will study,
Yes.
all right, please, because if you want to be in our justice wing, you have to know civic education as a police officer or someone who's interested in law enforcement. You have to be able to understand civic education because it's central to the protection of all human rights. Do you get me?
Yes.
All right, this is the end of our lecture. I will let me just let me send you the notes, the video right now so that you can write down the notes in your book and have a good review. So this is the end. Where do I end this meeting of our lecture? I will see you in the next in the next class. Am I supposed to end this Zoom meeting? I hate it when my desktop is in this version. Subtract end meeting. All right. Where do I end? All right. I will see you tomorrow for physics, our first physics lecture. All right. Bye.